And we'll be speaking with DeNapoli's challenger, Republican Paul Rodriguez, on next week's show. But moving along now to some big news from the State Department of Labor over the past week. First, the minimum wage in upstate New York will be going up at the start of next year. The new minimum wage north of Westchester County will be $14.20, up from $13.20. And second, we got a decision on the question of overtime for farm workers. The state has accepted a recommendation from a state wage board that will require overtime pay for farm workers after 40 hours in a week. That's down from the current 60 hours, and it'll be phased in over 10 years. Leaders from the state's farming industry have said the change will force more farms to scale back operations or close. The state has defended the decision, saying new tax credits passed in this year's state budget will cover the added costs. Here's what State Labor Commissioner Roberta Reardon told New York Now this week in Buffalo.
Everybody else got 40 hours and then overtime, and we just had to find some way to equalize that system. But we do think the long timeline will give the farmers time to adjust and figure out how they want to staff and operate their farms.
The first round will lower the overtime threshold for farm workers to 54 hours in 2024. Let's circle back now to the news of the week with this week's panel. It's Keisha Kluge from Bloomberg Government. Thank you for being here, Keisha.
Thanks for having me.
Happy to have you. So a bit of news that I want to start on is on Thursday, a federal judge struck down part of New York's new concealed carry gun law. It will take effect in 3 days and may not even take effect because the state says they're going to appeal it, but I'll let you talk about that. But he struck down a bunch of different things, most notably, I think, probably some sensitive locations where we were banning guns, museums, theaters, Times Square, libraries, places that serve alcohol, places that offer services to children. This was really a key crux, I think, to the gun law, because what happened with the Supreme Court, not to talk for this entire segment, but what happened with the Supreme Court is they threw out the state's gun laws. So now New York tried to create this new model, and now it's not working out so well. So what's next?
Definitely. Well, they created this new model, which had, like you said, an extensive list of places, which basically said, I think even Kathy Hochul herself said it would apply to everywhere, but like maybe some sidewalks. So the judge kind of took issue with that, and he also took issue with you have to have an in-person interview to get a permit, which can create a backlog and would therefore violate the Second Amendment, a right to bear arms. And then he also added a line in self-defense. So when they're considering you for a permit, they have to say, will you cause harm with said gun? And he said, well, if you're doing self-defense, you may cause harm. So he added that line in self-defense. So, but the interesting thing is he knew that the Democrats essentially in the state were going to appeal that. And so he put in this temporary restriction for 3 days, allowing them to appeal it and kind of get the higher courts, thoughts on the matter and then go back with it. So we're really kind of in limbo at this point. We'll have to see what the higher court says, and then it could go back to him, and they could have to make some changes to the law next session, which I think a lot of the Democrats are running on this issue in November. And so that causes a little bit of friction there.
I wonder what happens with this lawsuit in the long term. I mean, it's not out of the realm of possibilities that this law ends up at the U.S. Supreme Court again. And then what if they strike it down? Then the state is back to the drawing board, essentially.
Definitely. And that's kind of the risk they took. I mean, I think no one really knew how far you can go with the law before the Supreme Court would knock it down again. So I think they really took a shot. And, the people I spoke to said they were speaking to constitutional lawyers and trying to get the best advice on this legally. So we'll really have to see where the court goes. Now, it also depends on which court they can pick which court they want to go to, and they did choose a court in a very conservative area. So I don't know, maybe their appeal will be elsewhere. We'll have to see.
I did want to touch on the Micron announcement, but I think I want to skip that actually and go straight to the Court of Appeals. You had a story this week, kind of an update on where the search for the new chief judge is. And this is just, it's so important to highlight because this is the person who is the head of the state judiciary. They control the state's courts. They also sit at the top of the State Court of Appeals, the state's highest court. So a lot of power. What's going on with that search?
Definitely. So the application process closed at the end of August, and because the former judge, Janet DeFiore, put in her resignation early. So typically you would retire either the year you turn 70 or right before you turn 70, depending on the timing. And the commission that's charged with looking for your replacement would have a little bit more time to at least solicit applications and really get the best cream of the crop applying. Now, they didn't have time to do that, so they just solicited what they could, got the applications. Moving forward, they do background checks. They give them, I think it was like a 9-page questionnaire, so a much lengthier questionnaire. Why would you want to be judged? What would you do in the position? That sort of thing. And then they have until actually the week of Thanksgiving, so that'll be interesting, to give 7 nominees to the governor. The governor has between 15 and 30 days to choose her appointee, and then that goes to the state senate for either confirmation or they kick it back, and we'll see what happens. So we can expect a new judge probably in January or so. But the kind of side part of this is that there's calls for a more diverse judge, because it is in that top court. We're a very diverse state. They're looking for someone, a lot of progressives are looking for someone who's not a prosecutor. And typically we've seen these judges coming from, prosecutor backgrounds, big law firms, and they want to kind of change that and have this, more diverse person. But there's a shortened time frame to find that person. So it's a little bit of a challenge for the court. And they've also had to pick several judges in the last few years. It's been a very tumultuous time, just with, there's been deaths, there's been early retirements. So this commission's kind of been working on overtime.
How can this person change the state court system and the Court of Appeals, Keisha? Like, this person has tremendous power, but obviously whoever comes in is going to kind of set the tone from the top down. Definitely,
definitely. And Janet DeFiore was a very interesting person, because she was a Republican, turned Democrat, almost, right before she was picked for this by Governor Cuomo, former Governor Cuomo. And so she had sort of a conservative effect on the court. So I think progressives are hoping for someone that has more of a liberal effect on the court, and lawmakers too. I spoke to head of the Senate Judiciary Committee, Senator Brad Hoylman, and he said, when we pass laws, we would like them to stand, and that is what the Court of Appeals is there for. Things like the gun law would go up this one in particular went to federal court, but sometimes they can go to the Court of Appeals. So they're having an effect on, state law, state policies, and even things like vaccination requirements. At the same time, not only are they in charge of the legal decisions, but they're also in charge of a $3 billion court budget. They have, I think it's 1,300 judges and 15,000 employees. So you're talking about a pretty wide range. So some of the commission members were saying they're also looking for someone with administrative skills as well.
That's interesting. Well, you kind of need it. I mean, you're running that branch of government. I would hope that you have some sort of management experience.
Definitely, definitely.
But that's all we have time for. Keisha Kluge from Bloomberg Government, thank you as always.